Hello everyone, myself Sohamraj from grade 10 and today I am here to explain the properties of metals and their reaction with various substances. As we all know that we all are surrounded by metals, metals are all around us, even metals are present in our body. For example, we use metals in our kitchens as cooking utensils because they are good conductor of heat. We use metals to make big machineries because they are durable in nature. We use metals to make jewelry because of their lustrous property. We use metals in temples because they are sonorous in nature. These are the properties of metals, but what is a metal? Metal is a substance which has tendency to donate electrons. For example, metal in a chemical reaction will donate electrons to the other substance with which it's reacting. It will donate electrons from its outermost shell. Now let's have a look at the properties of metals. The first property of metals is state. Metals are generally found solid at room temperature. For example, metals like iron and zinc. These are the metals which will find to be at solid at room temperature. But here is the exception. What is the exception? Exception is the mercury. Mercury is the only metal which is not present in a solid state at room temperature. Whereas you will find mercury to be at liquid state in room temperature. Next property of metals is hardness. Metals are generally very hard. For example, metals like aluminium and zinc, they are so hard metals. That's why they are used to make bridges. But here is also an exception. What is the exception? Exception is sodium and potassium. Sodium and potassium, these two are the metals which are exception to this property as they can be cut easily through a knife. Next property of metal is luster. Luster is the property of metals which gives them the shiny surface. The next property of metals is malleability. Malleability is the property of metals due to which they can be beaten into sheets. For example, silver. Silver is the most malleable metal. But here is the exception. Exception to this property is zinc. Zinc is the metal which is exception to this property because they are brittle in nature. That's why they cannot be turned into sheets. Next property of metals is ductility. Ductility is the property of metals through which they can be drawn into wires. We use wires at our homes for electricity, for power. Metals like copper and silver and gold, these are the metals which we will use to make wires. But here is also an exception. Exception is zinc again because zinc is brittle so that it cannot be converted into wires. Next property of metals is sonorous. Sonorous is the property of metals due to which they produce ringing sound. Moving towards the next property, we have the next property as melting point of metals. Melting point of metals is generally very high. For example, melting point of iron is 1535 degrees Celsius. That's so high. But whereas metals like gallium and cesium, these are the metals whose melting point is very low as they can even melt on your palm. These are the physical properties of metals. What about chemical properties and their reactions? If we look at the reaction of metals, first we have reaction of metals with water. First, when metal reacts with water, you will get products as metal hydroxide and hydrogen gas is evolved in this process. For example, when potassium reacts with water, we will get products as potassium hydroxide and hydrogen gas is evolved. Now, here a point to be noted is that not all metals react with water in the same manner. For example, the metals which are present at the top of the reactivity series, these metals react with water so vigorously and violently that they lead to an explosion and lots of heat is evolved in this process. For example, when potassium and sodium, when they react with water, they produce lots of heat and it leads to an explosion. Next property of metals is reaction with oxygen. Now, when metals react with oxygen, they form basic oxides. Since we know that metals are basic in nature, therefore, when they react with oxygen, they form basic oxides. For example, when copper reacts with oxygen, you will get products as copper oxide. Now, some metals, when they react with oxygen, they form amphoteric oxides. Metals like aluminium and zinc. These two are the metals which, when react with oxygen, they form amphoteric oxides. First of all, what are amphoteric oxides? Amphoteric oxides are the oxides which shows properties of both acids as well as bases. Now, how to check for a metal if it is if when it reacts with oxygen, if it is amphoteric oxide or not? When aluminium reacts with oxygen, it forms aluminium oxide. Aluminium oxide, when you react it with any acid, that is HCl, when aluminum oxide reacts with HCl, you'll get products as salt and hydrogen. When the aluminum oxide reacts with any base, for example NaOH, when it reacts with NaOH, again the products you will get are hydrogen. Hydrogen gas is evolved and salt will be the product which you will get. And we have already studied in our previous classes that when acid reacts with bases, you will get products as salt and hydrogen gas. So in this case, aluminum oxide acts as both acids and bases. Therefore, it is proved that aluminum oxide is amphoteric in nature. Moving towards the next property, that is reaction of metals with acids. Metals, when they react with acid, we will get products as salt and hydrogen gas is evolved. Since we know that metals are basic in nature, therefore when they react with acids, we will get products as salt and hydrogen gas. Now here is an exception. What is the exception? Exception is nitric acid. When any metal reacts with nitric acid, hydrogen gas is not evolved. What is the reason? The reason is that nitric acid is a strong oxidizing agent. Therefore, when it reacts with any of the metals, it also oxidizes hydrogen gas, and instead of hydrogen, any nitrogenous oxide is evolved instead of that. But metals like magnesium and manganese, when these two metals react with nitric acid, they evolve hydrogen gas. So this was all about the properties of metals and their reaction with various substances. I hope everything is clear for you now. That's all from my end. Thank you.